This is So 302, Study Session 1, Origin of Man's Existence. Introduction. In this study session, we will discuss how man came into being. In doing so, we will examine three major views on how man emerged on earth. We will also examine the importance of living together by man in a community. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Present how man came into existence. 2. Explain the importance of living together. Views on how man emerged on earth. Many social scientists, theologians, and traditional leaders have often given one interesting explanation or the other on how man came into existence on earth. There are, as a result, claims and counterclaims about man's emergence on earth. We shall now delve into some of the evidences given about man's existence from the past, starting with the idea of creation. Christians' idea of creation. The Christians' answer to the question of man's existence on earth is that God created Adam on the sixth day following the creation of the earth. From Adam's ribs, he also created Eve, and both lived in the Garden of Eden and became the ancestors of all mankind. Man is therefore the end product of 6-day creation process. Many eminent Christians and theologians have made various contributions based on these biblical facts. Prominent among them were Dr. Lightfoot, the master of St. Catherine's College, Cambridge; Bishop Ussher of England; Isaac de Pereira, etc. Bishop Ussher was the first to write about man's creation. In the 17th century, he, on the basis of literary evidence in the Holy Bible, calculated that God created the earth in the year 400 BC. To this, Dr. Lightfoot added that the event took place on the 23rd of October 4004 BC at 9 o'clock in the morning. This fact was contained in his book written some years ago. In 1802, Isaac Pereira also wrote something similar. Local ideas of creation of man in Nigeria. On Nigerian local evidence, the myths of the origin of man are as many as there are ethnic units. For example, Ife, Benin, Uri, and Tiv are all centers of man's origin on earth. For example, the Yoruba people have a tradition of their origin in Ile-Ife, where God probably created the first on earth. From there, it traveled to other parts of the earth, but there are two legends on how this happened, both relating to Oduduwa, the father of the Yoruba, and the world at large. One states that God gave Obatala a calabash of sand, birds, and chameleon to let down to the earth, but he failed to accomplish this task due to his carelessness. God therefore called another person, this time a man called Oduduwa, whom God gave similar assignment. According to Yoruba tradition, Oduduwa was suspended from the sky by a web. On coming down to earth, Oduduwa threw his calabash on water, and the whole area instantaneously became land. The birds scratched the land and spread it to other areas. After this, Oduduwa dropped the chameleon on the land, and on observing that the land bore the weight of the chameleon, Oduduwa descended to inhabit the earth. The place where this happened was believed to be Ile-Ife. The other version of this story, though historical, points to how the Yoruba came to inhabit their present area. According to this version, Oduduwa, whom God first created in the Far East, made a long journey to the present Yoruba area and lived at Ile-Ife. There, Oduduwa subdued his environment and made a living out of it. He had 7 sons who became the first 7 kings, and from one of these, the present Oba of Benin claims descendants. Scientific idea of the origin of man. Scientific views differ greatly from the earliest view treated here. In fact, scientists hold strong opposing views to those of the Christians. For example, scientists hold opposing views that man emerged on earth by just a bang, simply because such an act could be performed by God and no more. In fact, many scientists have contended that life did not just start with a bang, as the various myths of man's origin indicated. These scientists started to query this view by applying scientific explanation to man's emergence on earth. We still remember Lamar's theory, 1744 to 1829, that more complex species developed from the simpler ones, and yet the famous Darwin theory in its Descent of Man is still very fresh in our memory. In 1859, Charles Darwin published his revolutionary book on the origin of species by means of natural selection. In it, he set forth his theory that all life on earth began from simple organs, out of which more complex organisms evolved. Man himself, said Darwin, had probably evolved over millions of years from ape-like ancestors. Darwin's idea came like a bombshell. They seem to contradict the creation story as told in the book of Genesis. Naturally, a storm of protest followed. Basic Christian ideas about a man's place on the universe were seen to be threatened. To say that even species had evolved from apes could be integrated as suggesting that there was no difference between man and the lower animal, and even as a denier of the Christian concept of man as a creature with soul made in the image of God. Many people in the 19th century then believed that they were faced with a choice between Christianity and science. Zoologists have scientifically proved that man belongs to the same general zoological class as the great apes. According to them, both man and ape share the same anatomical feature, such as identical skulls, skeletons, nervous system, muscles, brain structure, though the brain of a man is more elaborate than that of the ape. These similarities have sometimes been erroneously taken to mean that man is a linear descent from the ape. They only mean that man and apes had descended from a common ancestor in the remote past, and the various species that exist today are but terminal products of many divergent lines of evolution. Importance of living together. No matter the theory of the origin of man one subscribes to, it is important to note that man's survival basically depends on his ability to cope with his environment, to overcome its changes, and to utilize the resources and live together. Man's physical and social environment differs in many ways. The physical environment includes land, vegetation, climate, rivers, lake, oceans, mountains, lowlands, etc. The forces of this environment determine man's pattern of life, forms of occupation, and other forms of activities he undertakes in his day-to-day business of life. For example, man's occupation is determined by the type of vegetation and climate available in any given area. Human settlement could be traced back to the New Stone Age, when man started to practice agriculture and tame animals. Some 10,000 years ago, as the last ice age drew to a close, the environment occupied by man began to undergo radical changes. Drier and warmer period, no doubt, led to the development of vast grassland where forests had flourished in earlier times. This stage of man's life led to hunting of animals and gathering of wild fruits and seeds. Improved hunting techniques, in particular the widespread use of bow and arrow, and improved fishing techniques involving the use of boats. As time went on, many animals that were formerly hunted for food became extinct. The specialized techniques for harvesting and processing of grass seeds became widespread, and in some places led to the establishment of permanently settled communities of collectors, largely dependent upon abundance of wild grasses. As man began to live in settled communities with his fellow man, he began to enjoy the benefits of his venture. The main advantages of living together are: 1. It helps man to have compassion. Since man is a gregarious being, he needs the companion and association of other people to enable him live happily and comfortably in his group or environment. It enables people of the same group to live together and foster their interests and aspirations beyond their own bounds. It is the way of perpetuating social, cultural, and religious identity of a group. People who speak the same language, practice the same religion, and possess the same culture also associate as people of the same group. It provides the means of socializing its members to become active participants in the society. For example, it is through living together that individuals absorb the norms and cultural values that enable them to become active members of their group or society. It enables people to engage in self-help projects for the betterment of their groups. It enables people to evolve rules and regulations that guide their actions and lives in their group. It enables people to engage in recreational, social, and sporting activities. In order to achieve these benefits of living together peacefully, these factors must be taken into account. They include understanding individual differences, displaying summary. In this study session, we discuss the origin of man. We examine 3 views of man's emergence on earth: the idea of creation, local view, which centered on the Yoruba mythology, and the scientific view, which centered on the idea of evolution. Finally, we highlighted some importance of living together in a community. This is the end of study session 1. Thanks for listening.